Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. Okay, so I hope all of you are well. So let us start today's class. Okay, so I guess whatever we have discussed in the last class is clear to all of you. And in case if you have got any doubt, then you can ask me. Do you have any doubts in the last class? In the last class we have discussed the various models of distributed system, right? And then we have talked about the variations of client server model in detail. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now I'll assume that all of you would have got the concept, and those who were absent in the last class, I'll pass the recording of the lectures. Okay. Now today we are going to discuss very important topic of distributed system, and that is the clocks. Okay, this one. This is very important topic of distributed system, and we have discussed very briefly about this one when we were discussing the characteristics of distributed system, if you remember. Okay, there were three basic characteristics of distributed system, and those were concurrency, no global clock, and independent failures, right?
Failure. Yes, sir.
Okay, so now we are going to talk about the most important characteristics of any distributed system, and that is no global clock, or how exactly we synchronize our distributed system for any application. Okay, so this is what we are going to discuss in today's lecture. So first, let us try to understand how exactly we measure time in any system. Okay, so generally or usually we measure time with the physical time, right? So this type of time we generally measure with the help of your solar time. Okay, this one. So how exactly this time is being measured? I guess all of you are already very much familiar with this type of timing, with the different phases of the sun. Usually we measure time, right? Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and in this particular notion of time, generally 1 second, or in one day we have got these many number of seconds, 86400. But over here the problem is even the sun days are varying, or they do vary, right? We do not have the same amount of day in every season. That is the problem. Okay, so generally, let's say if the sun is exactly on the top of the our head, then we can say it is afternoon, right? Or if the sun has set down, then we will say that okay, it is evening, and it might be around 6 p.m., right? 6 p.m. or 6:30, like that. And in the morning, the moment you see the sun, you can say okay, it might be around, let's say, 6 o'clock in the morning, or 6:15, or let's say 5:45, right? So this is how we used to measure time in earlier days. But the problem is we cannot standardize this problem because of the different lengths of the days. Okay, so that is the major problem, and it happens due to the tidal frictions. Okay, so what can be done in order to improve this type of time? We can average the solar second, so that will give you the much more accurate time than a typical solar time. Okay, So the averaging can be done. And the most famous example of such time is your GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. Okay. So in this particular time, we do include or we do count mean solar second into consideration. Okay. So this is how it looks like, and this is a very famous picture where you can say this is a particular line which divides the east from west, and this particular time is being measured in the Royal Observatory of London. Here, okay, here. So you would recall the moment you watch any cricket match, often the time is being represented in GMT. So this is this one only, because we are very much familiar with our solar time. Okay, if anybody says 6 a.m. in the morning, then you expect, okay, sun would be rising, right? And the moment if anybody says to you, okay, it's 6 p.m., then automatically you can just feel, okay, the sun is about to set. So this is how. So this is why we consider this particular time so much, right? Which is your GMT. Okay. So your GMT time is generally located at longitude 0. Okay. Now the second and very important measurement of time is your international atomic time. Okay, this one, and we also call it as a TAI. And in this particular timing mechanism, we make the use of this particular element, cesium-133, and it makes these many number of state transitions in order to represent 1 second. Okay, this one. So what we mean to say that in this particular machine, if this particular atom has performed this many number of transitions, then you can say that 1 second has been passed. Okay, so these many number of isolations does happen in this unit of time, which is 1 second, and this is very accurate. This is highly accurate. Okay, so this is how the international atomic time is being measured, which we have discussed, that it is measured with the help of this particular element called as a cesium-133. And you would be amazed to know that it provides you the accuracy of 1 second in 6 million years. That means it will have a deviation of 1 second in 6 million years. If you will set your clock, then you will find the difference of 1 second in these many number of years. So this is how the accuracy of this clock. Okay. But the problem is, as we are very much familiar with the solar time, right? So this atomic clock, of course, naturally will not keep the track, or will not be step up with a solar time, right? So this is a problem. So in order to have this thing into consideration, because we are very much interested or we are very much familiar with the solar time, so the measurement of timing has been done with the help of atomic time, and as per the need, we do insert or delete the second, we call as a leap second, as per requirement, in order to match it with the solar time. Okay, so whenever the difference between the solar day and your atomic time becomes more than this, we adjust the clock. Okay, and this particular system is called as a universal coordinated time. Okay, in short, we call it as a UTC. Okay, so in today's world, more often we refer this particular clock, which is your UTC time. Fine. Then let us talk about your computer clocks. How exactly we measure time in the computer clocks. Okay, so in the computer clocks we have got a circuit. Okay, we call it as a CMOS clock circuit, and this particular circuit is generally driven by these quartz oscillators. Okay, and this particular quartz oscillator is generally backed up by a battery. So this is how the diagram looks like. So we have got a counter, then the value of this counter is being registered or is being kept in a register, and then this value is being fetched by a CPU to measure time. And this is how your quartz crystal looks like. Okay, these are the various quartz crystal. You might have seen this quartz crystal somewhere. So what happens that in our typical system, or these particular quartz crystals oscillates. Okay, so whenever these many number of oscillations happens, one interrupt is being generated. For example, okay, if these are the crystals and if they oscillates, let's say 100 times, then one interrupt will be generated. And when we specify certain number of interrupts, and especially in a quartz clock or in a computer clock, when we measure or count 60 to 100 interrupts, then we term those many number of interrupts as a second. I get your point. What I'm telling you, the first, in order to generate one interrupt, number of oscillations may be there. Okay, it may be any number. It depends upon the crystal which we are using. What is the frequency of that crystal and how many oscillations that particular crystal is being generating. Okay, so it may be that only one oscillation is there. It may be 10 oscillations or 100. It depends upon the type of crystal which we are using. Okay, so number of oscillations are generally used in order to create a particular interrupt. Okay, and when we measure certain number of interrupts, then we termed it as a 1 second. Okay, so this is how the time is being recorded in our computer clocks. Okay, so I guess now you would have got the concept. Am I clear? Students?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, where is the problem? If we are able to measure the time in our computer with the help of this quartz crystal, then where is the problem? The problem is, although we are able to measure the time, and these particular quartz crystals are able to provide us the accuracy of 10 to the power -6. That means we will be able to observe the difference of 1 second in approximately 11 to 12 days. So if we are having these particular type of clocks in our computers, and if they run over the time, then they will accumulate this particular delay. So this delay will be approximately of 1 second, okay, in 11 to 12 days. And as we all know that in any real-time application, even this delay is going to cost us a lot. Okay, so this is why we try to find out the mechanism through which we can get the accurate time. And we have discussed several mechanisms in the earlier slides, right? That how exactly we can get the more accurate time, and your atomic time is one of such mechanism. Okay, so as we discussed that this is our quartz crystal and number of oscillations will be there, and let's say that all those oscillations are being recorded, and after a certain number of oscillation we are generating one interrupt, and that interrupt is being recorded in the register. Okay, and the moment we count or we record number of interrupts we generate, or the CPU can consider that if these many number of interrupts have been recorded, then it is equivalent to 1 second. Okay. Now there are two very important things called as a clock drift and clock skew. That when can we say that the clocks are making different or the clocks are not accurate, right? So we have got two things, and with the help of these two things we can characterize any clock. The first one is clock drift and the other one is clock skew. So clock drift means the clocks which are ticking at the different rate. Okay. As we discussed that the moment we talk about your ordinary quartz crystal clock, they will give you the accuracy of 10 to power minus 6 seconds per second, which will lead to you that they will deviate by 1 second in 11 to 12 days. And if you manage to have high precision quartz clock, then in that case the drift rate is going to be with the accuracy of 10 to power minus 7 to 10 to power minus 8 seconds per second. Okay, and over the period of time it will create ever widening gap. Okay, so we'll discuss with the example. And of course in the last slide I was discussing that how this difference is coming, right? How these quartz crystals are creating this difference or creating this gap. It may be, since it's a crystal, so what may happen, we need to cut them. So there may be some difference in cutting those crystals. This might be one reason. And apart from that, the moment in whichever system you are placing those crystals, there may be some difference in the temperature. Okay. So even other environmental parameters may also come into picture, and those parameters will lead to the changes in the oscillation of any quartz crystal. Okay, so the changes may be due to the temperature. Even the changes may be there in the cutting mechanism of any oscillator, in any your quartz crystal or oscillator. So these are the main reasons because of which your quartz crystal tend to create or tend to vary from time to time. Okay. Now the clock skew, which we also termed as a offset. Okay. Now the clock skew can be defined as a difference between two clocks at any given point of time. For example, we have got a clock A and clock B, and we have synchronized both the clocks. Okay, and after some time the difference which we are able to observe can be termed as a skew. So over here we have just synchronized these clock A and clock B, and after some period of time now we can able to see that there is a difference of 4 seconds in between these two clocks. So this difference at any given point of time is called as a skew. Okay. So I hope clock drift means the rate at which these clocks are ticking. Okay, of course this particular clock is ticking with a different rate, right? And this one is also ticking with a different rate, and because of this skew is being created, right? So the it's the mechanism in which the clocks are ticking at different rate, and this is called as a clock drift. Am I clear with these two keywords, clock drift and clock skew?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Suyash? Suyash Agrawal, roll number 85. Devesh Kumar Sahu.
हेलो यस सर सुयश है
या सुयश कहाँ थे?
सर वो म्यूट पे था मैं देख नहीं पाया अभी आवाज आई तो सुना
अच्छा, क्या मुझे म्यूट कर दिया क्या?
नो सर आपको नहीं मतलब वो
चलो
ऑन नहीं हो रहा था म्यूट अनम्यूट कर रहा था बार बार
ठीक है, समझ में आ गया। क्लॉक ड्रिफ्ट, क्लॉक स्क्यू क्या होता है?
हाँ सर मतलब ये स्टार्टिंग से अपन ने वो लोगों ने देखा कि क्लॉक किस टाइप से मतलब लोगों ने स्टार्ट किया टाइम कैसे देखना शुरू किया सनसेट से लेके डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ वो फिर वो लाइट वाला आया कंसेप्ट फिर यहाँ आए
चलो ठीक है। So hopefully I can assume that you guys would have got the idea regarding clock drift and clock skew. Okay, because a lot of things are going to discuss on the top of these small concepts. Okay, fine. So
यस
now let us talk about when can we say that a clock is perfect. So let's say this is a clock, okay, capital C, and the moment you take the derivative of this clock, and if it comes to 1, then you can say that your clock is perfect. And the point which has to be noted over here, that we are considering UTC time into consideration. Okay, so if the derivative of a clock is 1, then you can say that we have got a perfect clock. Okay, now if we have got a drift, okay, drift with a slow computer clock, then in that case we'll be having this derivative less than 1, and the moment we have got this derivative less than 1, then you can say that we have got a slow clock. Okay, that means that over a period of time we will be observing or measuring a less time than the actual one, right? So this is how you can characterize a slow clock. And if we have got a drift with a fast computer clock, so in that case what will happen? You will find derivative greater than 1. Okay, and of course what is skew? Skew is the instantaneous difference between any two clock, right? So the moment we observe the derivative greater than 1, then you can say that we have got a clock with fast time. Okay, that means that after a certain period of time you will be measuring more time than the actual one. Okay, so this is how you can characterize your slow clock and fast clock. Okay, now how can we get the times from the universal coordinated time source? So let us just try to find out the ways through which we can get the time, because as of now we have just understood that the limitation of our typical computer clocks. Okay, and in those computer clocks we measure time with the help of the quartz crystal, right? Yes, any doubt? Okay, so we can get the UTC time with the help of your GPS receivers. Okay, and the moment you use this type of mechanism, then you will be getting the accuracy of plus minus 1 millisecond. Okay, so this is one way of getting UTC time. Then we can get the time with the help of radio receivers as well. Okay, and how do we get the time? We get the time with the help of your radio stations. Okay, you would have recalled that in the earlier days we used to measure the time when the radios were tuning or just they were reading some news and reading the news and all. Okay, so in the earlier time, the very famous approach to set the time was the radios, right? And with the help of these radio receivers, we can have the accuracy of plus minus 3 milliseconds. It depends upon the distance, how far you are from the original source. Then we can also use geostationary operational environmental satellites. And if you are using this type of source, then you can have the accuracy of plus minus 0.1 millisecond, right? So these are the ways through which you can get the very accurate time, which is your UTC. But now for each and every machine, this is not very much practical. Not practical because of its cost, size, convenience, and environment, right? For example, you are wearing any wristwatch and now you want to have very accurate time. Even your wristwatch, in your mechanical watch, in many of the wristwatches, digital wristwatches, we have a quartz crystal. Okay, nowadays we just try to fetch the time from our mobile operators and all. And those mobile operators are also getting their time from a UTC source. Okay, but in earlier times, we do have some watches in which we were able to, or we were using quartz crystal to measure the time. So what I mean to say that if we try to get the more accurate time, then these are the sources. But we have to look for the cost, size, convenience, and the environment as well. Okay, because these all sources are not very much practical. For example, I may have a GPS receiver with my clock, but it may possible that I am sitting inside a room. So as you all know that inside a close proximity, your GPS server or receiver will not work, right? And of course, those GPS receivers do come with a cost. So cost is going to be on a higher side as well. Okay, and of course, the size also matter over there. And the convenience, since we are not able to use it outside, inside, right? So it is not convenient as well. And of course, it is not very much easy to have the receivers to receive these radio signals and all. Okay, so these parameters are the major ones, or do play a lot of role that which source or which receiver we should use. So in order to find the solution of these problems, what can be done? We can fetch the time from UTC server as per our need. Okay, you might have done that in your computer or laptop, that over a period of time you would have observed some difference in your clock. Okay, then when you right click on the times and all, you might get one option to synchronize the clock. Okay, let me just see if I can show you. Okay, can you see the entire screen, students?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
See, now I'm just trying to set the date and time. Okay. Can you see this? Synchronize your clock.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. Now the clock is being synchronized with this time server, times.windows.com. Okay, so that means now I have synchronized with the UTC time. Okay, so in the similar fashion, we tend to adjust our time in our systems. Yeah. So I just shown you where I have just fetched a UTC time for my computer. Okay, so this can be done that we can synchronize our clock time to time as per the need. Okay, and this is called as a external synchronization. Okay, so there can be two type of synchronization, external and internal. Okay, external and internal. So how we can define that this is external synchronized or internal synchronized? Let's say we have got a computer clock C, okay, and we have got a time source S. So if the difference between these two, okay, of course you have to denote this is like S of t, and because this is your local clock, and if the difference between these two is less than a time bound, let's say that time bound is being denoted by capital D. Okay, so if this value is coming within that time bound, then you can say your clock is externally synchronized. Why? Because we are synchronizing our clock with the external source, which is being denoted by S of t. Okay, and when can we say that our clock is internally synchronized? Let's say we have got two clock, okay, Ci and Cj, and if the difference between these two clock is less than a time bound d, then you can say that your clocks are internally synchronized. Okay, this is your first clock and this is your second clock in a network. Okay, and if the difference between these two clocks is there within a time bound, and of course this time bound has to be greater than 0. Okay, so these are the two scenarios. The first scenario represents the external synchronization, and the second one denotes the internal synchronization. Am I clear?
Sir, please explain one more time external synchronization.
Okay, so as I've just shown you that it may possible that we may have got a computer, right? And now I want to synchronize my clock. Okay, so now what do we have? We have got a external server. We represent with S. So what can be done in order to synchronize my local clock? I may request this time server that please give me the latest time. So in response, this server may reply me. Okay, so let's say that this server has replied me. Now what I want, that my particular clock must be synchronized with this one, and of course there might be some delay.
Yes, sir.
Right? There might be some delay. So how much delay I can accommodate? So that will be defined by our time bound, and which is D in this case. So let's say we can neglect the delay of some seconds, right? If the right now the time is 10:30 and I am managed to synchronize my time, let's say by 10:31, then it is very much acceptable to me. And if it is creating the time difference more than 1 minute, then this is not acceptable to me. So over here you have defined the time bound of 60. Okay, so whatever difference has to be there at the end of this communication, it has to be less than 60. Am I clear now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is how this synchronization can be done, and this is the example of your external synchronization because the time source is outside our network. Okay, and in second case, there might be a scenario where we have got number of system. Okay, let's say we have got number of system in a LAN. Okay, this is Fine. Now, what we want that we have got an application that we doesn't care at all what is the time outside this lab. We want that whatever timing these computer has got, that must be seen. Okay, in a lab it may be possible that whatever time we have got after 5 minutes, or let's say after 10:30, or let's be more precise that at 11 o'clock sharp we need to execute this program. Let's say H. Okay, H.java, let's say. Okay, at 11 o'clock we need to execute this particular program, and the time which these clocks are having, let's say it is having 11, 11 and 11, but outside the exact time is something else. The outside the exact time is 12 o'clock, but all these clocks are running slow as compared to the external clock. But since we are in the network and we want that this particular program has to be executed exactly after half an hour, right? So when this time will, or this timing will solve the purpose. So in this case, you can say that the time difference in between these clocks has to be synchronized, or if they are synchronized, then you can say that there is an internal synchronization. Okay, there is not a much gap, or you can say that the gap in between these clocks are limited by a time bound D. Okay, so in certain applications it is also very much useful. Am I clear, students?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir. Fine. So the synchronization can be done with the help of your remote procedure call. So this is how the synchronization can be done. Okay, we may have a client. Okay, and this client may ask the server that what is the time, and in response, this server will reply you with its time. And now the client can set its clock with this time. Okay, so this is the simplest of mechanism through which we can get the UTC time, since we know that the UTC time is the most accurate time, right? Now, as we have discussed that this flow time, we didn't consider the latency into consideration. Okay, although we know that it is going to play a huge role as well. So we'll see that how can we accommodate this latency as well in our calculation. Now we are going to see the first algorithm of your synchronization, and this is called the Christian's algorithm. Okay, so let's say, yeah, we have got a client and we have got a server. Okay, now the task over here is that client needs to set its clock. Okay, so the client has sent a request to the server at time t0. Okay, at time t0, a request to set the time has been asked to the, or has been sent to the server. Then some time has been taken to process that request by the server. Okay, and that point can be termed, or that time can be termed as the T server. Okay, and after this much of time, your server has replied with its time, and the moment your client has received the time from the server, let's say this is T1. Okay, fine. So the estimated overhead in each direction can be calculated by reducing T1 from T0. Okay, and in order to neglect the delay, we can divide it by 2, or to minimize the delay, we can divide it by 2. So this way we can say that the time at the client side can be set by this time, and this is how we can compensate the delay. Okay. Suppose the time at T server is 3 o'clock. Okay. And this is the delay, which is T1 minus T0, and we are assuming this delay is symmetric in nature, and this is why we are dividing it by 2. Okay. And the moment you add up this particular term into your time of the server, then it will give you the much more accurate time at the client side. Okay. And this overall phenomena is called as a Christian's algorithm. Fine. So let us just try to understand this one with the help of example. Let us try. Yeah, this one is also termed as a round trip time. This one. Okay, this is called the RTT, round trip time. So let's say the round trip time, which is T1 minus T0, is this one, 800 milliseconds. And the send request was done at this time, and the receive request has been received at this time, at T1. Okay. And the response sent by the server is this one. So in that case, let me know what will be the time. All of you, please. What would be the time at the client? At what time the client should set its clock? If the send request is this one, receive response is this one, and the time sent by the server is this one.
Plus 400 milliseconds.
50926.
Tell me the time in this format.
Sir, 50926
Okay, so this is the time which will be there at the client side.
Achha. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, the time sent by the server, then the round trip time divided by 2. Okay, so whatever time has been spent, in order to get that time from the server, what we are doing, we are just dividing that time by 2. Okay, the actual time which we have got from the server, okay, and the effort which has been made to fetch that time. So we are assuming that that effort is symmetric in nature. Okay, so that is why we are dividing it by 2. It may be possible that the time which has been taken to send a request is more, and the time which has been taken to receive the request is less. Okay, so the moment we add up these two together and divide it by 2, that means we are considering that these two communications are symmetric in nature. Am I clear? Okay, so over here, that is why we are calling it a round trip time. So I hope you would have got the concept, and of course the accuracy of result can be measured with this minimum time. Okay, there is a time, the minimum time which has been taken to send a request and receive a reply. If we consider those two things, then we can find the range. Okay, of course, and we can also have the accuracy. So students, I hope you would have got your first algorithm called as the Christian's algorithm. Now let me know that this particular algorithm is the example of internal synchronization or external synchronization.
External synchronization.
Yeah, external. So this is one of the example of external synchronization. Okay, and of course it may have some disadvantages, like if the server gets failed, then the client will not be in a position to synchronize its clock, right? So this is your first algorithm of clock synchronization, and right now we are talking about physical clocks. Okay, the topic which we have started, clocks can have can be denoted by two types: the physical clocks and the logical clocks. So we will first discuss some examples of physical clocks, then we'll discuss the limitations of those physical clocks, then we will move forward to the logical clocks. Okay. So as we discussed the problems with the switches algorithms, maybe that server may get failed, okay, and somebody else may pass its time, or you can say that the malicious interference may also be there in between. Okay, so these are the problems which can be there. Now we are going to discuss one more algorithm called as the Berkeley algorithm. Okay, so let us directly come to the point. So what happens over here? Now we have got number of systems, and all those systems are connected in a network. Okay. Any problem? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we have got a network, and in that network we have got a number of systems, and what we have done, we have choose one of them as a master. Let's say we have assigned a job of master to this particular node, and the moment this particular node has been assigned the job of master, where we will assume that the rest of the nodes will act as a slaves. Now it is the responsibility of this particular node to take care of the synchronization of this network. Okay, so now how the timing or how the synchronization has to be maintained will be taken care by this master only. Okay, so this is a master and all these systems are slaves. Okay, so it is the responsibility of this master to synchronize this particular network. So in this particular thing, now let's say we have got four systems, 1, 2, 3, 4, and these are the timings which is being recorded at any point of time. Okay, the system 1 is presenting 3, or the time at the server or the master is 3 o'clock, and at this slave it is 3:25, at this slave it is 2:50, and over here it is 9:10. Okay, so what the master is doing, it is requesting the timestamp from all the slaves. Timestamp means the time. Okay, this 3:25 is nothing but the timestamp. Okay, time at any particular instance. Okay, now in the second step, what is being happening? We are calculating the average of the times which have been received from all the clocks. Okay, for example, from this clock we have received 3:25, from this we have received 2:50, and from this we have 9:20. And now we can see the time provided by this clock is varying by a large. Okay, over here the difference is very small, but the time which we are getting from this clock is deviating by a very huge margin. So what we are doing in this algorithm, we are just neglecting the time which is being received from this clock. Okay, so in our calculation, we are just calculating the average of these three. Okay, this one, and this one. Okay. Okay. So the average which is coming out is 305. Now, in the third step, we will be adjusting all the clocks by this calculation. Okay. So the time has to be 305. That means what has to be done? a plus 0.5 has to be added over here, right? And over here, we have to reduce this clock by this much of time, right? And over here, we have to add time by this much of unit, right? Are you guys getting my point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
The average we have agreed upon this time, and then the correction will be done as per this time only. Okay, so this is how, or this is what is being done in your third step. Okay, all the necessary corrections are being done at each and every clock. Okay, and this much, and this much, this much, and this much. Okay, so this is how this synchronization is being taking place in the network. Okay, and this particular mechanism or this overall process is called as a Berkeley algorithm. Fine. So I hope you would have got the concept of this clock as well, of this algorithm as well. It's called as a Berkeley algorithm. Since we are neglecting the huge variation, that is why we are able to say that this is going to compute a fault tolerant average, right? And in this particular arrangement, any system can take the responsibility of master. Okay, this is the internal matter. Although we are going to discuss that how we are electing a master, we'll discuss the algorithm for that one as well in the coming lectures. Okay, so now the question is, this particular arrangement or this particular algorithm is the example of external synchronization or the internal one?
Internal.
Internal.
This algorithm is the example of internal synchronization, right? So, is there any doubt?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. So hopefully, I'm assuming that all of you are not having any doubt in today's lecture. So what I'll do, I'll just stop because there is one more important thing. So I want that we should discuss this thing in the next class. Okay. So I'll stop my lecture, today's lecture over here. So again, if you guys have got any query or any doubt, you can ask. No doubt?
Sir,
Okay.
please repeat this Berkeley algorithm one more time.
Okay, yeah.
Example, sir.
Okay. So in the Berkeley algorithm, what was happening? We are assuming that in a network, we may have a number of systems. Okay, so let's say in the network, we have got 4 systems, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, now the task is that we have to synchronize these systems together. Okay, so whatever timing all the systems have got, they have to synchronize with a single time. Okay, so in order to have the synchronization, what arrangement we have done is we have designated one of the system as master. Okay, let's say we have given the responsibility of master to the system. Now this system will be asking the time from all the system present in the network. Okay, so let's say master has got the time 3 o'clock, and these were the timestamp from the all the remaining 3 systems, right? So the master has polled कि okay, आप जो है अपना अपना time बताइए, right? So the system 1 has sent its time, system 2 has sent its time, and the system 3 has sent its time. And then what master has done, master has calculated the average of all the received time. And it is also noted that one of the system is giving a time which is deviating a lot, right? Because the master has got time 3 and here 325 and here 250. So all these time stamps are varying by 8 max, let's say 35 seconds. Okay, whereas this is varying by a lot. So that is why the master has neglected the counting of this system, of this time stamp, to calculate the average. Okay, or suppose if the time stamp at this system would have been, let's say 302. Okay, so in that case we would have been calculating the average by 123 plus 302 divided by 4. Then whatever time would have come, we would have been setting our time by that much time. But since we have just neglected the timing or the time stamp from this system, so the overall number of systems are 3, and therefore we are calculating the average from these 3 systems only. Okay, and the average which is coming out is 305, and then we are just trying to find out that what variation has to be done at each system to set the time by 305. So we see that we have to increase this clock by 05, right? And we have to reduce this clock by minus 20, right? And this one by plus 15, and this one by minus 605, right? So this is how the offset are being corrected to each and every clock. And this particular mechanism is called as a Berkeley algorithm. And since we are talking about the synchronization within a network, and all these clocks are setting their time by helping each other, they are not getting the time from any external source. So this is a typical example of your internal synchronization. Am I clear now?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, if the third system, you said if the time was 302, then all the 4 systems would have been considered, right?
Yes.
Okay. And sir, I wanted to ask that what is the criteria for ignoring the system? Is there any criteria for it?
You can define a threshold. You can define a threshold. If the difference between, or if the time collected from any source is, let's say, more than 30 milliseconds or 30 seconds, then you'll ignore that one.
Okay,
in order to calculate the fault tolerant average.
Okay.
So our time bound can be considered. Over here, we just orally have considered that this is creating a huge difference into calculation. So that is why we have just neglected this one, right? So you can just define a threshold.
Okay.
So if some clocks are reporting their time by this much of threshold, then you can neglect the recording form or neglect the timestamp from that clock.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any other doubt, students? Okay. So I hope you would have got the concept, right?